And that was Rod Rosenstein testifying in front of Lindsey Graham this past week. Joining me right now is the Senator Lindsey Graham, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And Senator, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. That was your question on whether or not Andrew McCabe lied to Rosenstein. Do you see Rosenstein breaking away from Andrew McCabe? What's your reaction to what took place last week?
I was pretty stunned. So Rosenstein said, I signed the warrant, but I did not know anything about the underlying documentation being altered, and I did not know that the central document to get the warrant, the Steele dossier, had been disavowed in January. Because if anybody signs this warrant application knowing that the Russian subsource disavowed the reliability of the Steele dossier and that the Department of State lawyer altered the email, if they knew that, they would be going to jail themselves. So I'll call McCabe. I find it hard to believe that McCabe and Comey did not know that the Russian subsource told the FBI in January, oh, by the way, the document you're using to get a warrant against Carter Page, the Steele dossier, is a bunch of hearsay, bar talk, and garbage. That's why they will eventually be called before the committee.
So let me just bring you this statement from Andrew McCabe after your hearing, Senator, because McCabe is firing back. He says this: Mr. Rosenstein's claims to have been misled by me or anybody from the FBI regarding our concerns about President Trump and the campaign's interactions with Russia are completely false. Mr. Rosenstein approved of and suggested ways to enhance our investigation of the president. Further, I personally briefed Mr. Rosenstein on Jim Comey's memos describing his interactions with the president. Somebody's lying here. Are you going to call Andrew McCabe to testify in front of your committee?
Just as sure as the sun rises and sets, I will. And here's what I would say to Mr. McCabe. In the warrant application by the FBI and the Department of Justice to the FISA court, you said that the Russian subsource was truthful and cooperative. Inspector General Horowitz found a memo about the interview with the Russian subsource, saying that the Russian subsource disavowed all the information in the dossier, that it wasn't reliable, that it was bar talk, it was hearsay, it shouldn't be used to get a warrant. So at the end of the day, the FISA court rebuked the Department of Justice and the FBI, and I want to call every person who signed that warrant and have them account for what they knew and when they knew it. We're not going to let the system blame some low-level intel analyst or case agent for defrauding the court. I believe it goes up to the very top, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it, and that means Sally Yates and Rosenstein and McCabe and Comey are all going to come before the committee, and they're going to be asked, what did you know and when did you know it?
Do you think we're going to see jail time here? I mean, they can't all say I didn't know it, right?
Well, you see, that's the point of Senator Hawley was very frustrated. He looked at Rosenstein and says, well, if it's not your fault, who is it? He says, I'm accountable, and I'm not to blame. Jail time would lie with anybody who had knowledge that the Russian dossier, the subsource, disavowed the Steele dossier. Remember, McCabe and Horowitz said, the IG, that if you didn't have the Russian dossier, you wouldn't get a warrant, because they tried to get the warrant on an occasion before. It was turned down, and it was McCabe said, there's a document in New York you might want to use against Carter Page. It was the Steele dossier. They never tried to verify it. They used it all the way through June of 2017. But the problem is, in January 2017, the Russian subsource appeared for 3 days before FBI agents and said, this is a bunch of garbage. So we're going to find out what happened, and I'm not going to let these people blame some low-level agent or intel analyst unless that's the truth, and I don't think it is the truth.
So what you're saying is, if they knew in January of 2017 that the dossier was garbage, and the guy from Russia who brought them the dossier to Christopher Steele also disavowed of the dossier, and yet they still used it to continue getting re-upped warrants for Carter Page, then that was fraud, and that you think that could mean jail time if you can prove that they knew it and they used it anyway?
And well, Durham's looking at this. What did Horowitz tell us? He found a memo in the file where the intel analyst who interviewed the subsource said that subsource denied the details in the dossier, that he didn't provide all this. He doesn't know where some of it came from, and a lot of it was just hearsay, bar talk, not accurate. So you'd have to believe that one of the most important investigations in the history of the FBI, a sitting president, that the system was denied information about a 3-day interview where the subsource disavowed the primary document. I find that hard to believe, but that's what we're going to be looking at. And again, if the case agent, intel agent told higher-ups that this whole case is falling apart and they kept going forward, then they're in trouble with the law.
Yeah. Senator, are you going to interview those case agents that actually spoke with the subsource from the Russian dossier? Are you going to interview the FBI agents, those 4 individuals, these low-level individuals you're saying,
I've been asked to interview
may or may not?
I made a request to interview the case agent and the intel analyst, and there were 2 other people who interviewed the subsource for 3 days in January, again in March, and again in May, and they're denying me the ability to do that. I'm going to keep working the system. Attorney General Barr has been the most transparent Attorney General in my lifetime. Grinnell released a lot of information, but why did they run all these stop signs? The question is, did the case agent and the intel agent refuse to tell the system about exculpatory information? Does the fault lie with 2 or 3 people, or was it a system out of control? Here's what I think. Every time there was a stop sign for Carter Page or Flynn, the system moved forward because the people at the top did not want to stop. When General Flynn, when in January the 4th, the FBI wanted to clear General Flynn because there was no there regarding him working with the Russians, that's when the January 5th meeting occurred. It was the 7th floor that wanted to continue to look at General Flynn, not the actual agents in the field.
Yep. Well, we all want accountability, and we are certainly grateful. The audience is grateful to you, Senator, for starting up those hearings last week. We so appreciate you joining us this morning. Thank you, sir.